It's the Harris Football Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings, America's top-rated daily fantasy app, with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody, welcome in. My name is Chris. This is a thing that I make to make your ears a little more happy. Hi there, you children of the possum. Thank you for listening. It's another week here as we get closer to your fantasy drafts. If you've been listening the past couple of weeks, where I've been doing 5 shows a week, or maybe even listening all the way since the beginning of July, thank you. If you're just getting back into it today, hello there. Good to have you back. It's a good week to be listening, some great guests coming, and we will finally start digging into ADP, average draft position. I've been looking. I've got some surprises. We're going to start talking about value this week. We're going to get some flag players this week, though today's podcast will largely wind up being given over to the rookies for 2021. I will talk about that a little more in a moment. Of course, I encourage you to go check out harrisfootball.com, where you can find the 2021 Player Profile Almanac. If you haven't gotten the Almanac yet, but you get it each year, you want to give yourself a little bit of time, because it takes a little while to read it, because I wrote it all summer. It's got a profile on every single player that you would want to know about, and last Friday, I did update number 1, so you'll be downloading very current information with one more update to come a week from Friday. But I'm going to start today with the Hall of Fantasy League, the draft that we talked about on the show. It's a very public industry draft. I did it yesterday, Sunday. A lot of you watched it live as it happened, and I thought I would talk about why I drafted the way I did, and hopefully it'll be an interesting perspective to you about why format matters so much when we come to drafting and draft strategy. So I did talk about this league last Tuesday. You heard Matt Sposta from the HOF League. He was my guest that day. This is a league where you can make a bet on which expert's team is going to win, right? So that draft was Sunday evening, and a lot of folks saw it happen, and then also a lot of folks saw the results, and they were like, hey, wait a minute. You didn't follow your own ranks. You didn't follow what you say on the show. Come on, man. I read the almanac. What's going on? Do you really believe anything you say on the show? So let's talk about that. So the key thing I'll say is, well, this is a super flex. That obviously is going to change the general positional strategy of the draft, quarterback. But of course, I do have super flex ranks in the almanac as well. But the big difference is that it's a 10-team league. I wish it had been 12. I'm certainly more comfortable drafting for 12. I can't tell you the last time I did a 10-team draft. Everyone, all the experts who were in that draft are more comfortable drafting in 12. And the ranks in the almanac assume that you're playing in a 12-team league. But this is a 10. And it matters. It just does. You've probably heard me say this before. 10 is starball. A 10-team league, to me, is shoot-for-the-moon territory. You have to be really strong to win. And therefore, I tend to be willing to accept way more high-variance players and try to hit most of them and have them work out. And as you'll see when I start talking about the players I took, that's what I did, and found myself jumping around a little bit in my own ranks, really sniffing out upside. But actually, what you really want to hear me talk about, if you paid any attention to what happened in that draft, is my first 2 picks. Some of you listeners found them to be a little bit scratchy, so we'll talk about that. So I'm picking 6th out of 10. I actually did have conversations with both Andy Behrens and JJ Zachariason about this draft. They were unofficial and certainly definitely unpaid consultants for the Los Angeles Sidekicks in that league. Because the truth was that nobody knew exactly how this thing would go with the quarterbacks early. In a 10-teamer, would quarterbacks fly off the shelf, or would people look at the 10 teams and think, nah, you know what? I'm good. I can wait a little bit because there's only 10. If I'd been picking 6th in a 12-teamer, I mean, obviously you always want to react to what happened, but I'm almost positive I don't take a quarterback in the first round. I almost never do. I've obviously done so many of 12-team Superflex drafts. I've done tons. But in a 10-teamer, the logic, as we talked about it, was people are going to feel bolder, and it could go one of 2 ways. You know, they're going to realize even if they go QB, or even if they double up QB in the first 2 rounds, they could feel good about what they get. You know, your 3rd round pick is going to still be really good because it's only 10 teams. Like, there's going to be a top 5 receiver there for sure. There's going to be a top 7 or 8 running back there for sure. Or on the other hand, they might decide, let's wait because I can get the quarterback later. So I gamed this out a few times with Andy and JJ, and every time I did, I was getting Joe Mixon. If I took the QB, I was getting Joe Mixon or Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Hopkins or DK Metcalf in the third round, which, of course, this is 10-team Superflex. That bears no resemblance to a non-Superflex 12-team draft. So the strategy that I wound up with was I was going to roll with what the draft does. At 6th overall, if 4 quarterbacks go in front of me, cool, I'll take Dalvin Cook. Oh, and this is a half-point per reception, not full PPR, so I don't really have half PPR official ranks, but I would probably put Cook a little bit ahead of Alvin Kamara-ish in a half-point per reception. So if I had the choice between Cook or a quarterback, I'd go with Cook. And if I had a choice between Kamara or a quarterback, I'd take a quarterback. That's a pretty slim distinction, but I wanted to err on the side of quarterback because if you listened to Friday's podcast, well, you heard Sig Bloom picking 9th in this draft say he was going 2 quarterbacks in the first round. And I just assumed if I waited into the second round, again, because it's 10 teams, we think it's going to bend. We don't know. As we're talking about it, we don't know. We think it's going to bend toward many people taking a quarterback. So I might wind up with like Burrow, Brady, Stafford as my QB1. So tending towards Cook or a quarterback. So the draft goes 1 McCaffrey, 2 Mahomes, 3 Cook, then Kyler Murray, then Josh Allen. That's the 5 guys. Both people I talked with, both were like, we think these are the 5 guys that are going to go in front. So now I've got a choice. I'm going to go quarterback, but I've got a choice among quarterback. Controversially, compared to the market, Aaron Rodgers is my QB2. I'm going to make a video this week talking about why I think Aaron Rodgers should be the QB2, and it's going to be a Wednesday on our YouTube channel. But I also, by this point, know that nobody else has Rodgers QB2. So I do the gambit. I take Lamar Jackson. Talked about it with Barons for like a half an hour on Saturday. The idea was, let's see if I get lucky, and let's see if Rodgers is there on the comeback in the second round. And Andy's like, no way. And I said, maybe. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. Cheat code enabled. Let's see if we can get them both. If I go Rodgers first, obviously knowing what the market's going to do, I won't get Lamar coming back the other way. It's not like you have to get 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds, even in a 10-teamer. All drafts are different. We didn't know at the time, but it turned out 3 teams went quarterback in the first 2 rounds. Yup, including Sig. He was not telling us a fib on the show. So I take the gamble. I'm hoping Rodgers will be there in the second. I take Lamar. Dak Prescott goes right after me, which is big. Prescott goes ahead of Russell Wilson. Could work out. I think Wilson's just a way better player. But it starts to set up like, maybe this could actually happen. Kamara goes. Sig takes Russell Wilson, which is why he's Sig. He's great. I love that pick. The team at the turn goes Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams. And their quarterbacks, as it will turn out, are a borderline disaster. Sig is going next. I'm assuming one of 2 players. He's either going to follow through what he said on Friday and take a quarterback. Of course, it'll be Rodgers. Or he'll take Travis Kelce because we're getting to the point in drafts where Kelce always goes. And in this league where it's star ball, I assume if anything in a 10-teamer, the Kelce drafter will feel even more emboldened to do it. But Sig takes Tom Brady. No criticism of the pick. We don't know how things are going to go. If it had been me, I'd have taken Rodgers. So we've had 12 picks, and I pick 15th. Holy moly. Only 2 picks are going to go before me, right? This gambit of waiting on Rodgers could be about to pay off. The team that drafted Kamara takes Tyreek Hill. That team's quarterbacks also will wind up being a potential disaster. Folks, I have 1 more pick to go, and neither Kelce nor Rodgers has gone. I wait. The team that took Dak Prescott is up. My decision is made for me. I take Rodgers or Kelce, whichever one they don't take. And they take Zeke Elliott to go with Dak Prescott. That is an interesting energy there. But okay. It worked. Rodgers made it back to me. The guy I actually wanted to take at 6th overall in this particular 10-team Superflex made it to me at 15, and I was paralyzed. It was a 50-50 call. And I'm not the early tight end guy. You can find good value late at tight end, even more so in a draft like this. Although, in a league like this, in a 10-teamer, Kelce should have been gone. So I let Rodgers go by, and it's definitely arguable that I shouldn't. It was a feel thing more than anything. The thought I have now is, yeah, for sure. If I had known Kelce would be there at 15, I'd have taken Rodgers at 6. I would rather have Rodgers Kelce than Lamar Kelce. I would. Unfortunately, that wasn't my choice. My choice was Lamar Kelce or Lamar Rodgers. The Lamar pick was already happened, right? And it's wildly close. I probably could go back and do it again and take Lamar Rodgers and be really happy with the team. But the thought process again was starball, get the biggest difference maker at the top because depth is going to be available. I mean, at that point, when I was picking in the second, Nick Chubb wasn't taken, Saquon Barkley wasn't taken, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't taken. And so, yeah, for those of you following along, I did pass Rodgers by and I took Kelce. And then I have posted the whole draft board on social media. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Harris Football. You know, I definitely hewed closer to my own ranks for the rest of the draft, beginning in the third round when incredibly 26th overall, I still got Saquon Barkley. Austin Eckler went 6 picks ahead of Barkley for some reason. I mean, I know the reason. It's the ACL. It's risky. My team embraces risk. I did, in fact, take the Jack Gerbil, Josh Jacobs, 5th round. Matt Ryan winds up my second quarterback. I got A.J. Brown, I think, 4th round, right? I took Golladay late. I took Michael Thomas in the 9th, Michael Pittman in the 10th. You see, I was jumping over guys where even I had them rated because of upside. Anyway, it was fun. I hope in my talking about it, the lesson was both realizing what your league format is and adjusting. 10-team is pretty rare in my world, but definitely, to me, encourages riskier ranks, riskier picks, and also a lesson, hopefully, in adjusting on the fly to what's actually happening in the draft. I think my team wound up really strong, but then again, in a 10-team league, that's the point. You're going to have about 8 teams where you look at it and go, wow, that team is really strong. We all know the dirty secret of fantasy in any size league is that injuries and random swings of teams that we never expected to be good or bad will wind up deciding our leagues, and we'll just have been wrong about many things. But on paper, I think I've built a lot of ceiling and definitely some scary floor in order to get the highest upside team I could.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, so yeah, I typically don't do that because, what do they say? Nobody wants to hear about anybody else's fantasy draft after the fact. But that was a very public one, and I definitely saw people asking questions about why I did what I did. You might not agree, but that's where my logic came from. Trust me, if you're doing those 12-team mock drafts with us every Thursday, or if you're just watching the videos about them on every Friday throughout August on YouTube, you see me adhere a lot more closely to my ranks in those drafts. And of course, also, many of the people who are complaining at me won't hear what I just said anyway, so you can't please everybody. Anyway, as I said off the top, today is really going to be turned over largely to talking about the rookies for 2021, and who better than the man who writes the rookie scouting portfolio. He's my friend. He's a truly good dude, and we haven't had him on the show since before the NFL draft, so now we can hear him talk about how they're going to fit in their new NFL homes. Of course, I'm talking about Matt Waldman. I will ask Matt to refresh us what he thinks about the talent of the 2021 rookies and how they fit. It'll be fun, and I thank you so much for listening today. We're sponsored by Dynasty Owner. Check out dynastyowner.com. Just do it right now. You got a second? Type it in. Have a look. Because if you're a veteran fantasy player and you think you've seen it all, you should play in a league at Dynasty Owner. It's Dynasty, and you've played in one of those, but you've never played in a Dynasty league that uses actual real-life NFL contracts for the salary that'll count against your fantasy team's salary cap. You want to talk about a league that changes the way you value players? Oh, I had someone tweet me the other day about like, hey, what rankings should I use in a Dynasty Owner draft? And I was like, there's no ranks. There aren't. You can't really use anyone's, which is exciting. Every draft is different because everyone is willing to accept big NFL contracts differently. The cheaper guys go earlier. Some superstars with big contracts will also go early, but some will go really late. You will truly have fun because you can truly pursue strategies you want. There's no programmed conventional wisdom here. Plus, teams never die on Dynasty Owner. They just go to a store. You can buy a team in an existing league right now if you like the roster of that team. Find out all about it at dynastyowner.com. I've played the format. It's great. dynastyowner.com.
today's guest.
And today's guest, as promised, my friend Matt Waldman. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Waldman. He writes for Football Guys. We all are checking out mattwaldmanrsp.com because he writes the rookie scouting portfolio that is essentially the foundation of how I think about rookies, because you hear Matt when he comes on the show before the draft and we talk about the rookies then. In addition, Matt was just telling me that mattwaldmanrsp.com, if you're a Dynasty player, he has a package that has Dynasty 2-year projections of potential, all the kids and what they're going to do for Dynasty. So really check out mattwaldmanrsp.com for all of your rookie and Dynasty needs. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Chris. Good to be on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. This is like the update show because people who are careful listeners who heard your appearance going back to the winter, I've already heard your overall takes on these guys, and hopefully a lot of them have gotten the rookie scouting portfolio and therefore have read a lot of your takes. But we haven't gotten to talk to you since they've all had teams, and so I'm interested to hear. We'll get a refresh because maybe some people don't remember that show. We'll get a refresh on your opinion about the players, and then also just kind of your overall impression of how they're going to fit into their organizations. I'm going to start you out at running back, the scarcest of the positions, if it's not that crazy Hall of Fantasy League that I just did, where quarterbacks are the scarcest. So we'll start out with Najee Harris. I think he was the consensus number one rookie dynasty draft pick, but not so much for you. Not that you don't like Najee Harris, you liked another guy better. But I know you like Najee a lot. He lands with the Steelers. There's always a balance between loving a prospect, which I do, and yet still feeling like a rookie running back shouldn't go quite that high. So I like Najee a ton, and it seems like the Steelers don't have a lot of other running backs that are any good. But I also don't think I'm going to get him in drafts because he's going to go really high. But refresh us your evaluation of Harris and what kind of fit he is with what you think Matt Canada's offense will be with the Steelers.
Sure, and when you take a look at Najee Harris, I mean, certainly I had a back that I ranked higher, but at the same time, being the second highest back, on my board is a pretty dang good thing. And he's in the top tier for my cheat sheets that I provide subscribers in rookie drafts. So he's in the top tier. He's just in the middle of the top tier. It's a stronger receiver class, and receivers tend to be better plays in dynasty leagues and in redraft leagues. Certainly nowadays, if you find the right fit with receivers, they are capable of that 900 to 1100 yard season, and sometimes even more, as we saw from Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown, even earlier in his career. But Harris is a guy who, the Steelers are struggling with their offensive line a bit. They're trying to retool it, but they've had some guys, that have been injured and gotten a little older or have had to move on. And so they're dealing with some younger players on the interior of their line. But Harris is the type of player who has the quick twitch athletic ability and the power, contact balance to negotiate lanes that aren't always clean. And so he's someone that has the vision to do that. He has enough burst to get around the corner if need be when he needs to bounce things or cut things back. And he's a terrific receiving weapon. He's someone that does more than just catch the football. I mean, they're probably going to primarily use him in the flats, as a check down option, as a screen option in the passing game. But occasionally they can match him up against a linebacker and win on seam routes, bullet routes, wheel routes, things off play action like that. He beat one of the things that on his tape that's really telling is his ability to beat cornerbacks like Patrick Queen, who's with the Ravens, had a pretty nice rookie year last year. And, his tape is littered with games where he's beating SEC quality defenders who will be in the NFL or already were in the NFL by the time Harris was a senior, on the types of targets that you would normally see for tight ends and wide receivers. So this is a player who can do a lot for a team. He may not be, one of the leading rushers in the NFL this year, and I doubt he will be in the Steelers offense where they spread the field and do a lot of short passing, but he's a guy who will likely get close to 1,000 yards, 1,000 to maybe even 1,100 yards, and he could give you 7 to 8 touchdowns this year. as a runner. So he's someone that can be a running back 2 for you in most formats, because of what he can bring, and he can get the tough yards for you when a team doesn't, when an offensive line doesn't block as well. And there weren't any backs last year who were healthy who could do that on a consistent basis for Pittsburgh. McFarland just wasn't that guy. McFarland, I have a thing on my site that basically is an article called "What Would Frank Gore Do?" It was because I watched Anthony McFarland make a run and lose yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars, all-time defense, and he and I thought, I wonder what Frank Gore would have done on that play, because it looked like McFarland diagnosed that play wrong. And then I literally looked at the first play I found of Frank Gore that week, and it was coincidentally the same exact type of play that they ran with McFarland, and Gore handled it at his ripe old age and, diminishing athletic ability 10 times better than McFarland should have handled it.
All right. So let me interrupt you. Okay. So Najee Harris we like, and we probably can't spend this much time on all the players because
that's okay.
Because you
we're
have
not
to,
gonna.
Yeah. Because you have a life to live. The thing I'll say about Najee Harris is just remember all the things you just said about quickness and ability, agility, at 6'2", 230. Just realize that he's potentially the complete package, and we don't really. I've said it a few times. We don't really know what the Steeler offense is going to be. Matt Canada's work, right? He comes as the West Coast guru from college. He's the guy people learned from, right, in college. Interesting. I don't know how West Coast you can really get with Ben Roethlisberger, but it'll be interesting to find out. Let's do Travis Etienne. He's probably the other running back to spend a decent amount of time on, because, wow, people have decided they don't like Travis Etienne in drafts, because I guess they're believing everything that Urban Meyer sells, which is third string behind Carlos Hyde. Okay, if I'm very willing to make some money on Travis Etienne if that's how you're going to draft him. I would still take him ahead of James Robinson, to be honest, because I think he's a super, super dynamic player. I think you do too.
I think he's good. But I think he's got some adjustments to make. And honestly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on Travis Etienne, because he's a guy that, he can be a value to you in PPR leagues potentially, but he's not nearly as good of a runner as James Robinson. And he bounces things too much up outside. He's someone that doesn't really understand how to set up lanes as well as he should. He's improved in the area, but I think it's going to take him a couple years to really do that at a high level. So I think he's fine where he's being drafted right now, and so you can get him at a decent value because of his receiving game. He is a very good receiver. They're going to use him in a variety of facets, but the fact of the matter is that James Robinson's better after contact. Robinson's better at setting up creases. James Robinson's more patient. He understands when to cut back and manipulate defenders. And, I think Etienne will be winning opportunities due to his draft capital and his immense promise due to his long speed. But they're going to use him in enough facets that he'll have PPR value. And he's good at the value that he's at, but I don't think he's going to be at Najee Harris's level in terms of fantasy production year one.
Oh, well, no. No, Najee Harris is a borderline first-round pick in a lot of drafts, so no, I'm not saying that. I'll just make a bet with you right now about who has more touches by the end of the year, Etienne or Robinson. I'll take Etienne. Will you take Robinson?
There you go. I'll give. Actually, I would say it's going to be. I have it close to even. Okay. So that's kind of where I'm at. But
way to split the baby, Matt.
I'll take the bet with you just for the fun of it.
Well, you're going to be on all year. We were talking before. You're going to be on all year regularly, so you can rag on me as we go. Javonte Williams in Denver. I'm not super enthused about him as a prospect. I think he's fine. I think he's okay, but I think you feel the same way. I don't think you felt like he was one of the most talented running backs in this draft.
No, I liked him. He was number 3 on my board. Okay. Etienne was much further down. Right. Williams for me is, but that's the thing. Williams isn't a sexy back, for the way people look at running backs. He was the Mark Ingram of this class, and
that's exactly who I compared him to. And maybe because you said so on the podcast, but in the almanac, it's exactly who I compared him to. And like Mark Ingram has had great moments in his career. He just also had a bunch of seasons of in a committee, hurt all the time, like super physical, but not like with a giant body, so therefore hurt all the time. And I don't know, Javonte Williams doesn't thrill me.
Yeah, he's not a speedy back, so that's part of it. He doesn't have great breakaway speed. He does everything well, nothing extraordinary. And people will look at some of the highlights and be really thrilled with his contact balance, his power, and a lot of that is good when you're bullying secondary defenders. And he can definitely do that. I think he is going to be the lead back in that team by the end of the year, as good as Melvin Gordon can be at times. But I think that, you look at Williams right now, and he's going to be a contributor to begin the season, and it's going to take an injury, most likely, for him to earn the time, earn playing time from the start where he will be the lead back. Otherwise, we're looking at someone who will take on that role probably by midseason on. He's a good player for folks who might want to trade, for someone who could give you a good stretch run. And Denver's going to want to run the ball a lot. That's what they're hoping for. The problem is how open will those rushing lanes be with the quality of quarterback play that they have. And I think that you're looking at Williams at best. If he assumes that role, you're looking at him being kind of a Mike Davis-like player behind Teddy Bridgewater or, Drew Lock, depending on who they use on what given week. It seems like the way how even that quarterback competition is. And as a result of that, you're not going to get a highly efficient back year one, but a lot of that's going to be due to the surrounding offensive talent.
Yeah, so when you say 3, you're talking his career. You're not talking this among rookies. You're not talking this year necessarily, which is fair. Williams and Gordon for me, I have them back to back. I don't know what to do with them. They're both like low level RB2 candidates where you could luck into, but you're drafting uncertainty with those guys for sure. Let's quickly jump over the guy we're going to spend a little more time on and just talk about Michael Carter. He's probably the last of the rookie running backs that people are considering in standard redraft leagues. And it strikes me that his act is Etienne-ish. Is that about right?
I would say that, I have him rated above Etienne. And
again, for Dynasty or for redraft?
Both, actually for both.
Okay.
But Carter, to me, is a player that, the Jets' offensive line gets bagged on, and certainly there are reasons for that. But they have made improvements. I think you're going to see improvements with that line this year. The issue is now that they have a rookie quarterback and a quarterback room that really doesn't have a veteran until they got Josh Johnson about a week ago. So that's a big question mark for me because you have a quarterback that I think can be decent over the course of time, but it's going to have a lot of ups and downs. It's a young receiving core. Carter's going to get a lot of checkdowns. I think that over time they're going to see that this is probably their best between the tackles runner. He has the juice. He's someone that understands. He has functional balance. He's someone that can make the first and second man miss. He's the best route runner and receiver in this class. So he's someone that really works well with his quarterback. I would not be surprised if this is a guy that has 50 or 60 receptions, even as a rookie. And so from a PPR perspective, that puts him higher up on a lot of boards for me. And I think that he's a better interior runner than people realize. The issue is whether the Jets can supply enough touches for him on the ground for him to be combined with what he does through the air to be, a running back too. I think he's a safe flex play in a lot of leagues, with the upside of being a mid-range running back too.
Hey, a quick break to thank Brooklinen for sponsoring. You've heard me talk about their sheets and their wonderful towels. Brooklinen also now has loungewear for lazing around on a Sunday morning and watching football. T-shirts and tank tops and sweats, all made to be just as soft and comfortable as the rest of Brooklinen's great stuff. As with all the products you see on Brooklinen, Brooklinen grew up as a company to cut out the middleman and get you luxury stuff at a reasonable price. I've got one of their t-shirts. I've got the Bushwick fleece pants. They're really, really comfortable. There's a reason Brooklinen has over 75,000 5-star reviews. Definitely check out the towels because their towels are insane. They're great. But also this new loungewear. Get comfortable and get it for less at Brooklinen. Go to brooklinen.com and use my code HarrisFootball. You'll get $20 off with a purchase of $100 or more. That's BROOKLINEN.com. And use the promo code HarrisFootball for $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. Brooklinen.com. Use that code HarrisFootball. All right, we're back with Matt, and we're almost through with the running backs, but we need his best player in this running back class. The one who he's out of lockstep. That's not where most of the dynasty analysts are going to tell you to go, but Trey Sermon was Matt's number one running back, and Matt has a pretty damn good track record of finding these running backs. I mean, Matt came on this show and told us about Nick Chubb ever before we all fell in love with Nick Chubb as a pro. So let's listen to him on Trey Sermon with the 49ers. I guess I want you to talk about his ability, but let's just frame the conversation. In a redraft league this year, do you happen to know about where you have Trey Sermon ranked among running backs?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be past my top 20, more in that 20 to 30 range.
Okay.
But he's a guy that you're going to want to reach a little bit for. You know, it's around the same place that Raheem Mostert is going. And when I advise people at Football Guys, I advise him to take Trey Sermon and reach a little bit for him. Because when you look at the 49ers, you have to understand that this is the best running game in theory in the league right now. They have the most diverse running game. They have good personnel along the offensive line. They have a pair of quarterbacks who are excellent in the play action game. And with Trey Lance, the rookie there, if he does take the starting job earlier than expected, he has terrific wheels and can run. And Kyle Shanahan will use him in a lot of misdirection type of looks that will open up the running game in the same way that other quarterbacks with running ability and big play ability can open up the ground game for a runner. And Sermon is a back who's he's versatile in the types of run schemes that he can execute. And that's one of the most important things for rookie running backs. And people overlook because most people just look at athletic ability because it's what they can see and what they understand about football. Sometimes what they don't always understand to the same level of detail is which type of style of runner can do zone games versus, gap scheme versus duo. And Sermon can do that all. He is a extremely refined runner with contact balance, with great footwork, good burst, and someone who can carry the ball, 15, 17, 20 times a game. He's a good pass receiver. So it wasn't used a lot of that at Ohio State, but he's a guy that in the type of passing game they use in San Francisco, screen plays, outlets, he runs that all very well. He's picked up the pass protections extremely well at San Francisco already. He's earned first-team looks with the offense, and a lot of it's due to Mostert being banged up a little bit, but it's also been due to his play and his ability to catch on to the concepts, and Kyle Shanahan has praised him for his work already in the offense. And when you look at Sermon, I think most people just missed on him because, again, people get really goal-focused on long speed, which is used about, actually gets to be utilized maybe 4 to 5 times a year for a back on a good season. This is a guy that's a doubles hitter, a consistent double hitter. He'll basically turn losses into, 10, 12, 15, 20-yard gains on a regular basis. And he can stretch a defense well enough to give you 40, 50, 60-yard gains. This is a guy by midseason. When you look at Mostert, he's on a 1-year deal. He can't stay healthy. He's someone that has been, that's basically in his late 20s, early 30s already right now. Sermon's the man, going to be the man by midseason. This guy could be your league winner.
So if I'm in a redraft, let's say half point per reception, and I'm choosing among Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, who's the highest that you would take?
Oh, I'd take Trey Sermon, and honestly, I would rather take a receiver than Najee Harris and just wait for a guy like Sermon and maybe reach a little bit around maybe 12 to 16 picks earlier, because we don't like to reach. People talk about that all the time, but when you understand what good football is and what good players are and how that works in fantasy, you can reach a little bit to your advantage. And some of the best high stake players know how to reach because they know who good football players are. Trey Sermon's a good football player in a great situation.
So let's talk receivers, and we'll probably have since there's more of them, we'll probably have a little less time per guy. But we'll refresh ourselves just kind of with their ability. Ja'Marr Chase, is he your number one? If you're doing a rookie dynasty draft right now, is he your number one?
He is, and it's pretty close. With another player we'll talk about, but he pretty much can do it all. He can play inside, he can play outside. He's someone that doesn't have blinding speed, but he understands how to get separation, and he's playing with a quarterback who he has rapport with and understands how to target him. And he's going to make plays for you once he figures out how to handle the more advanced press coverage looks that he's going to see and superior athletes on a weekly basis. And he's someone that does have the burst to pull away, even though you hear some Bengals beat writers say that they're concerned a little bit about that in practice. But I've seen Titans beat writers ask about Derrick Henry's footwork and be concerned that he was ever going to make it in the NFL. And we see how Derrick Henry turned out. So, to me, Ja'Marr Chase is going to be just fine. He can catch everything. He runs every route well, and he can get separation short, intermediate, and deep.
So I think you're going to tell me that out of order of how they're getting drafted, that Jalen Waddle is the other one. Am I remembering that right? That he's the one that you considered pretty close to Chase?
Absolutely. And Waddle is, people look at him and they think he's Henry Ruggs too. And because people logo scout the way that they do, looking at a Alabama or whatever team a player came from and saw the last player in the NFL who's speedy, and they think, oh, well, he must not be a good route runner. He must not be able to make contested catches. And Ruggs had some difficulty with route running, though he was a good contested catch player. Jalen Waddle's just a better version of Henry Ruggs. And when I'd say better in everything. He goes up and wins the ball. He's a clutch player. He's a terrific route runner. The way that he can make breaks and get in and out of them in the intermediate game is so important in the NFL, because otherwise teams can cheat either against you when you in the quick game, in the short passing game, or in the deep passing game. And when you can run those intermediate routes, you create a bind for the defense schematically, as well as what they do individually one-on-one in coverage. Waddle is already looking strong in camp. The ankle injury is really a non-issue, I think, at this point, even though there were people having little concerns about it from time to time. But in the same way that, it was the same beat writers who were concerned about Derrick Henry. I'll just call them the Derrick Henryites. So
I still have concerns about Derrick Henry, but he's pretty much proven himself.
Right. So Waddle to me is in a really great spot, because also he's paired with his college quarterback. They understand each other. The rapport is going to be good. If you took Jalen Waddle ahead of Ja'Marr Chase just because you liked what's going on in camp and you think Miami's going to have a better passing offense, even though most people would say it's Cincinnati, I wouldn't blame you about Waddle either.
So I do get tripped up on the presence of Will Fuller. I mean, not week one, but it just seems like in redraft, in Dynasty, I'm all aboard. Waddle's a clear top 5 pick, and maybe even higher than that for Dynasty. In redraft, I've got all 3 Dolphins receivers sort of clumped together, because it strikes me as kind of a mishmash at first before Waddle gets his sea legs, as it were. Do you share those same concerns just for redraft purposes?
Sure. No, because I look at Will Fuller, and here's my deal. If Will Fuller is the cicada of the NFL. Basically, it's like long awaited, long anticipated for him to come out of the darkness of the.
And there he is, and then he's gone.
And there he is, and then he's gone, and then it stinks up your roster just like they stink up the roads.
That's fair. Yeah.
So he's a great player when he's healthy, but his track record's so bad that I wouldn't rely on it.
Okay, so Devontae Smith, I actually had a little higher than Waddle before Smith hurt himself in training camp. This is for redraft, and now I kind of have them back to back in that. Probably not quite a automatic fantasy starter, but like in a 3 wide receiver league, a good maybe third or maybe flex. They're part of what I call the wide receiver 3 and the infinite sadness for now, just because they've never played before and we have to make sure they can. So Devontae Smith for you, I think you're still going to say nice things about him. Like I don't think you're here to tell me that Devontae Smith is like really, really
He's
bad.
not trash. No.
Right. But I also don't think that you considered him really even that close to the level of Chase and Waddle.
Yeah, he's a little bit below that.
Yeah.
But he's, in any other draft, he would be one of the top prospects for sure. This was just a special class. And when you look at Smith, he's someone that wins well deep. He's very good at going up and winning the ball. He can run excellent routes once he gets past the line of scrimmage. But the big deal with him is that he is small, he's slight, he's someone that can get shoved around by patient cornerbacks with physicality. And that's basically what's in the NFL. So he's going to have to adjust, and that's something that's going to take a little bit more time for him. He's also playing with a quarterback who may be productive from a fantasy perspective and has a deep game, in Jalen Hurts, but may not have that intermediate game on lock. And I think that there's going to be some struggles there for him to be a consistent fantasy receiver week to week this year. So I have him more projected in that 600 to 800 yard range as a fantasy receiver, which is good enough for exactly what you described, but probably not at the ceiling.
Right. Okay. So then other names. So it's been a bummer of a camp for Rashad Bateman because when we're told, it's not that serious of an injury. It's not your injury when you're, when they potentially need surgery. You love Rashad Bateman though. I think you think he is closer to the level of those other guys. This is probably just put a damper on his redraft value this year.
A bit, but if you're one of those people that hold out hope, let's remember that Odell Beckham missed a lot of training camp after a good start and looked like he wasn't even going to be the starter to begin the season, and he wasn't. Had a great year. And then A.J. Brown got injured in the middle of camp after his mini camp. People were like, oh, wow, he looks for real. And then it looks like he was lost in the shuffle and didn't get to play for most of the preseason until the very end. Now, Bateman, it might take him about a month and a half to come back into the season. And so it's midseason for him. But
Right.
This is a guy that, that teammates and coaches were like, he does not play like a rookie. This is a veteran already. This is a pro. So given that, I think that he's a good player to watch on your waiver wires, who you can be able to add when an impatient fantasy owner drafts him late and then decides as a manager that he's going to drop him, and he sits there on the waiver wire for about 3 or 4 weeks, and you can take him 1 to 2 weeks before if you have the luxury to be able to take a chance on him, and you're going to get a player who could very well be the reception leader and yardage leader for the Ravens receiving core from mid-season on.
Right, once he gets back on. Yeah, because if people haven't caught up to it, he had a groin injury, he required surgery. He's not going to be ready for the start of the season. It doesn't mean he can't contribute at all, but it probably does mean in redraft league you can leave him alone. There's the Moore brothers, the Elijah and Rondale, both generating enough hype to float a battleship, obviously, because the moment they make a nice play, everybody freaks out. I think you think they're good. I think you think they're limited.
Yeah, I think Elijah Moore is a little bit more of a slot receiver, and neither of them I think are like every down outside players, but both can be high volume reception guys from the slot who can give you some outside looks. They're both highly skilled, but the thing is they're going to need the scheme for it to work out. And I think with New York, you're going to find that he's going to be very Jarvis Landry-like. With a little bit more big play ability than Landry, which can, early career Jarvis Landry was a reception king. And so I think you can get that out of Elijah Moore and possibly this year, but the up and down nature of what's going to be Zach Wilson, I think is what puts a ceiling on Moore right now. But he's having a delightful camp, and then when you look at Rondale Moore, I think Rondale Moore, I have him higher than that. He's my third receiver that I would probably pick of the rookies because the way that they spread this offense in Arizona, it may not be as sophisticated of an offense as people hoped it would be when they brought in their new coach out of Texas Tech, but more someone that's going to benefit from safeties having to pay attention not only to DeAndre Hopkins, but if the reports that AJ Green is healthy and is playing at the level that they claim he is, then Moore is going to get a lot of single coverage, and he's awesome off the line of scrimmage. He is electric in terms of being able to separate from defenders. I haven't seen him make a lot of Steve Smith-esque like catches, which is where he's compared oftentimes in terms of a player. But if he can do that, he might be as good as any of the receivers that we've talked about at the top of the board. And I think at the way that they're going to use him on jet sweeps, as well as using him in the slot, he can be a 60, 70 catch player as a rookie right now. And that, to me, he's a value. He's kind of the Trey Sermon of the wide receivers in this class right now in terms of where you can get him and what his ceiling could be year one.
One more break to say, if you have problems with ED, it can make you feel pretty helpless. It can be embarrassing, and guys just might not be comfortable talking about it. But ED is a medical condition like any other medical condition, and now you can get help from Roman. You can go to getroman.com/Harris and talk to a U.S. licensed healthcare professional. No embarrassing trips to your doctor or the pharmacy. With Roman, they'll work with you to find the best treatment plan, and if medication is appropriate, it ships to you free with 2-day shipping. It's straightforward, it's convenient, and it's discreet. Take care of ED without leaving your home. You can do something about it and feel better. Go to getroman.com/Harris today, and if you're prescribed, using the /Harris on the URL will get you 50% off your first month of ED treatment. That's half off your first month when you use getroman.com/Harris. It's a way to have confidence and control. getroman.com/Harris. Okay, we're back with Matt, and we are through talking about running backs and wide receivers, except we're not really done talking about wide receivers, because we have to talk about one more, but he plays tight end. His name is Kyle Pitts. And I have to admit, I've done a lot of drafts already, Matt, and there's many, many more to come. Most of the drafts I've done to this point, I don't care that much about, but I've done a lot of them, and some of the ones that I do care about are coming up. And I haven't wound up with Kyle Pitts one single time. I think part of that is just because of happenstance, right? It's just like the time where you're considering maybe taking him. Okay, well, I like somebody a little more, and then it comes back around to you, and he's gone. But also, there's just usually someone in every single draft that decides to take Kyle Pitts like in the third round, and you go, right. Okay, well, I really like him, but I can't do that. I assume you're going to tell me I know you've already told me you really like him. You think he's an awesome talent, but I assume even you probably in a redraft league can't do that.
No. And I think he's a 5th round player, 6th round player. Absolutely. I would consider that. 3rd round, that's a little high for me, though. My buddy Sigmund Bloom over at Football Guys is over the moon on Kyle Pitts, but he gets over the moon about tight ends with athletic ability a fair bit. And if you know that about him, then you know how how to formulate your draft plans, and it can work. But that's his tendency.
We just did that Hall of Fantasy League draft yesterday, and Sig is in it, and I'm in it, and it's a 10-team league, and he took Kyle Pitts in the 5th. So he took him 49th overall, top 50 player, so I can't do that.
Yeah, and he contained himself to have him in the 5th round, so there you go. But here's the thing. I mean, the argument against Pitts is that no tight end has, since Mike Ditka, has been a 1,000-yard type of receiver. So if you're expecting Kyle Pitts to come in and be, Travis Kelce this year, the odds are highly against it. Then again, he is an odds-breaking type of player because of the fact that he runs routes like a wide receiver. He has the wingspan of a wide receiver. He goes up and gets the ball well, and he's someone that they're going to detach a lot from the formation, and they're going to use him more as a receiver to the extent that I would say that Hayden Hurst is basically a guy that goes undrafted, who should be drafted and could be a top 10 tight end this year because he's going to actually be the tight end. Kyle Pitts is probably going to be the wide receiver too in Atlanta's offense. And so if you're looking at guys like Olamide Zaccheaus and Russell Gage, you're wasting a draft pick, if you ask me. Pick them up on the waiver wire after someone drops them if they start to have some good weeks put together, if you need someone in a flex play. But Kyle Pitts is a guy that will be more of a wide receiver this year than a tight end. They're going to use a lot of 2 tight end sets, but then split him apart. So they're essentially using 3 wide receivers or 11 personnel with him as that guy that you can say, well, it's really 12. No, it's 11. And then all the football theorists can, of your crowd can argue about that while they're having beers, And so Pitts is a guy that 800, 900 yards, it's possible. Could he be a great red zone player? People may, jerk, kind of have a reaction when I say this, but Austin Hooper was a fine red zone player at Stanford, a very good red zone player. What he was known for was winning against tight man coverage in the red zone on contested catches. And Matt Ryan is not that type of red zone quarterback. I would actually say the weakest part of Matt Ryan's game might be the red zone, tied with his deep passing accuracy, if you're looking at pinpoint accuracy. So I have concerns about Pitts having that high touchdown count this year. I think he's more in that really 700 to 800 yard range, which is great for a tight end. But you're still drafting T.J. Hawkinson and Mark Andrews above Kyle Pitts if you're being somewhat conservative and looking at track record.
Yeah, Sig is not. Sig was on Friday, and he is not doing conservative. And as I said then, I'll say now, the real question comes down to much more just formational stuff. If they just flat never ask him to be a tight end, then his aspirational rank is okay. But I just don't think that's the case. I just think they're going to ask him to do tight end things. They're going to ask him to block sometimes. Sometimes he's going to have to. At which point, when you're just you can't perform like a high-level wide receiver 2 when a lot of your snaps are not even going on pass patterns. Like, it's just not how it works usually. You can, but it's typically not how it works. So
the one thing I'll add to that is there's a reason they brought in Lee Smith. And Lee Smith is the best blocking tight end in the game, probably as far as what he does. And they bring him, and Hurst isn't great at it. But I think you're going to see Pitt split out a ton. And if there's a player, but seeing him
some.
as
I'm saying some. If you're asked to do some tight end things, it's automatically a limiter for fantasy. It just is.
It can be.
I mean, it just is. Period. End of story. It just is. Like, if you're going to compare somebody to like a wide receiver 2 to what Calvin Ridley was last year with Julio there, right? Yeah. You don't have the number of routes to run if you're asked to do some tight end stuff. If he's asked to... Go ahead.
But here's the other thing that I'll argue back is that with a guy like Kyle Pitts, you have to understand that the efficiency of per play of what you can get at the tight end position when you're a Kittle or a Kelsey who are asked to block, or a Gronkowski in his prime who was asked to block, what they can get off play action and get him running free against defenders that have no business covering him but will have to. He's going to be a guy that for one pass, he's going to wind up with basically the quality of 3 receptions worth of yardage on a lot of plays.
All right. Well, that's fine. And yet you and I are on the same side of the argument, which is that if he's Travis Kelce right away and he knows everything Travis Kelce knows now in year, approaching year 10 of his career, then we're wrong. You and I are wrong.
Right.
But I don't think that's likely. But, I also don't think it's I don't think it's like a dunderheaded take. I'm not saying it's like really stupid to assert that. If he's generational, he's generational. I don't think we know that he's generational, but we'll see.
I think you got to play the odds on that one and go against it.
So quarterbacks, I guess what I'm going to do, the vast majority of people listening are thinking redraft. So dynasty wise, I think, I'm going to, if there are 4 guys, well, is Mac Jones one of the 4 guys? As the Patriots fan, I'm like, let's just not talk about Mac Jones. Even though you like Jones, he's fine. I will talk about Mac
Jones.
But
Jones.
Sure, but the 3 that that potentially have fantasy relevance this year would be Trevor Lawrence for being Trevor Lawrence, for being the number 1 pick, for being the kind of anointed one for years, and then Trey Lance and Justin Fields, because they might come in and suck, but they might come in and run, and that's what everybody would want them for. So Mac Jones probably not on the redraft radar, but I think Lawrence, Fields, and Lance are going to go in most redraft drafts. And I wonder if you could kind of gauge for me 2 different things. First, I want you to gauge the likelihood that Trevor Lawrence is ready on the team that he landed with the shakiness, the overall, uncertainty in Jacksonville, whether he's likely to ascend to the level of trustable thrower. And then, well, let's do that first, and then we'll get to Fields and Lance.
Okay. So, I mean, I can go through this quickly for you if you really want. It's just up to you. But Trevor Lawrence is a guy that he's in a very good situation, actually, when you look at the receivers that he has. He has young, talented receivers in Chenault and Chark, but Marvin Jones also is the wily veteran who's an excellent football player and can give you inside and outside looks. This is a fairly talented skill player offense, and Lawrence is good enough in the pocket and has the arm strength that Gardner Minshew lacked to be able to make some of the tough throws that Minshew couldn't do when he avoided pressure. So Lawrence, I think, will be ready. I think that he's going to be the ultimate garbage time quarterback because the Jaguars' defense is so bad that he's going to get a lot of throws. And as a result of that, with the receivers he has, he's going to be a productive player. I think you should be drafting him probably in that 8th to 10th round range. And if you can get him there, you're going to get a quarterback one this year because of the fact that they are going to be playing from behind a lot. And
you know that I do not
throw the ball.
I have to interrupt you on that because I can't. It's not a good basis on which to. I believe you that Lawrence is good and could take advantage, but I don't. They're going to be throwing. We're terrible at predicting that. We're just terrible.
Well, that's fine,
we'll
find.
We
as a whole maybe are, but maybe I'm not. So that's the fun part about that.
Right,
so that's I.
Where's he rated?
I get that.
Among quarterbacks? Where's number what?
He's one. Yeah.
No, that's dynasty, but like redraft this year.
Oh, I think he's 8th or 9th. I think he's the 8th or 9th best quarterback in this class. Yeah, for redraft leagues. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that is a minority opinion. That is a deep minority opinion, but at least people are hearing it.
That's how I've made my living, and that's why I've been doing this since 2003 at the level I've been doing it. So I make my misses, but I have bold calls too.
You do have bold calls. I've been doing this for a while too. I don't know if
you
knew
have,
that.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if you knew that. So then let's talk about the two runners, Justin Fields and Trey Lance. Lance now has more heat because as an NFL culture, we are, stupid? And I'm not telling you that Trey Lance shouldn't have more heat, but the reason is stupid. Like, they saw him look good in an exhibition game. Like, we don't know anything yet about playing time for either one of them. They're both really, really good prospects, I think, right?
Yeah, they're excellent prospects. Trey Lance was the number 2 on my board and not very far from Trevor Lawrence. The stupidity about Trey Lance overall was that he's going to need more time to actually understand and acclimate to an NFL offense. And that was the stupidity of it because North Dakota State, he actually played in an NFL-style offense and made adjustments at the line that most of the big-time quarterbacks in college football did not. He actually had to make the line calls. He made the audible adjustments. He did all the diagnostic things that a lot of the top quarterback prospects don't do until they get into the league. And he played in an offense that threw short to deep in terms of progression reads, which is more difficult to adjust to doing. And he was still a downfield passer who was accurate and could make plays all over the field. So this is a guy who's already pushing Jimmy Garoppolo in camp. Now, will he win that job right away? Probably not. And they'll probably just have packages for him. Like if you remember Cordell Stewart way back in the day, he might have those Cordell Stewart type of packages early on. But as Jimmy Garoppolo begins to show the seams of his game mid-season, it's more likely that Trey Lance will be in, and he could be that guy down the stretch who gives you combined rushing, passing points in fantasy that can put him on the border of being a quarterback one. So he's a good player to take maybe at the end of drafts if you have a strong quarterback one and you want to ride the hopes that he can give you a Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type of stretch run the way they did as rookies.
Right. And Justin Fields, this really the same story, probably not going to win the job, may not be ready as a thrower right away, but potentially like he is a very fast player, so potentially another league winner if he takes that job in week 9 or whatever.
Absolutely. And he's a guy who can throw downfield, and he's a little less consistent from what you saw on tape with Trey Lance, as, diagnostically, looking at the defense and understanding of where to go and what's being ferreting out, what's being disguised and what's actually the way it is. He had some issues with that at Ohio State, but he's also had moments against top teams where he showed that ability. It wasn't just, he balled out as an athlete. This was a guy that actually showed pocket presence, ability to read the defense the way that he needed to. He just wasn't always consistent with it. And I think that he will develop along those lines and give you and become a top quarterback in the league eventually. But this year it's going to be more about, that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson year 1 plan for him, where it's like, look, we're going to let him run year 1. If he doesn't see it, we're not going to harp on it with him. So he may not be as efficient of an offensive leader that will go into big play passing game type of yardage for him. But over the course of, games, you're going to see that he'll get enough looks and do enough for you that he'll accumulate yardage and get scores in a way that may not help the team as much as it helps fantasy players.
Right. Yeah, I think both those guys, that would probably be, that's what you're looking at for this year, but that's okay. We're on a fantasy show, so having them get drafted late. I mean, I'll just say that Trey Lance went in a 10-team draft yesterday in that Hall of Fantasy League, went in the 6th round.
Yep.
Don't do that. Yep. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. In a super flex, not a good idea.
No.
But 100%, they both need to get drafted, of course, absolutely. And then I teased Mac Jones. I know you like him as a prospect, probably more than I do. I'm being a pessimistic Patriots fan. He probably shouldn't be on your redraft radar. He's much more of a flyer if the offense looks good and there's no Cam Newton. But there's a lot of ifs and buts in that conjunctive sentence for sure. Okay, Matt, well, this was great. Thank you for catching me up on these rookies and all the listeners as well. I hope you'll find Matt on Twitter at Matt Waldman. You can find him at Football Guys, and just go to mattwaldmanrsp.com and you can see all the fine information that he has available there as well. Great to talk to you, Matt, and looking forward to speaking once the season gets going.
Always.
And thank you so much for listening. Let me also thank today's sponsors. We had Dynasty owner Brooklinen and Roman, 3 longtime sponsors, been with us for years. If you have the means and the need, it's wonderful if you check out what they've got. And without them, this show wouldn't happen. I'm not working on any sort of commission deal. This is not where I'm getting a percentage of anything that you spend. It's an advertising arrangement, but that's why there are promo codes and URLs, because when you use them, they know it, and then they decide to come back. And what am I even talking about? You do a wonderful job using them because they keep coming back, and I really appreciate that. You can find a full list of all the current sponsors, pick out one where maybe you do have a need, and they're at harrisfootball.com is the full list of the people who are currently sponsoring the show. That's going to do it for this Monday. But the week is only getting going, and this is a good week to be tuning in. Coming up on Tuesday, we are going to start talking about average draft position in earnest. Jim McCormick is going to be my guest.
Hello.
Just one of the funniest humans in the world. And Jim and I are going to count down our 5 biggest ADP surprises. That's going to be a good one. Hope you will come back and listen to that one too. Until then, thank you again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. I will talk to you tomorrow.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.